What advice can you give on choosing an editorial topic?
The first thing that comes to mind is choose something that you're passionate about, because, well, for one, your writing will reflect it, and your readers will pick up on that too. You really care about this, and they're going to want to read it. Some of the editorial writers and even columnists that I like the most, I can enjoy sort of and appreciate their opinion, even if I completely disagree, if it's really well written, and that comes from being, I think anyway, passionate about your topic. So sounds like all of you guys, the topics you propose or you're talking about doing, or maybe a little bit personal in nature, or really bugging you in a certain way. I think that's where any good editorial comes from. It's something that you observe and you're like, I don't like this at all, or people need to know more about this issue, and I'm going to say something about it. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. Something timely, too, is important. Like if there's a big decision coming up, like whether it's like the coming to class earlier, adding more time to the school day, things like that. I mean, that's the time to take a stand is now, whether you're for it or against it, because once the decision's made, it's too late. So that's another thing that comes to mind. Oh, and consider your readership, too. I mean, I wouldn't editorialize on something when I worked for the Garden Island paper on Kauai, for instance, that my readers, or at least that they wouldn't care about. I'm not going to talk about like Iraqi foreign policy or something for the readers of Kauai. Like, who cares? They can go to a different paper for that. We need to stay more focused on local issues. So, yeah. Editorials are certainly a time to put opinion into things. I don't think you owe it to the other side necessarily to be like, oh, well, this is their position too, like you would in a normal front page news story, where you need to be completely balanced, and the reader leaves it after reading it and be like, I have no idea where the writer stands on this issue. Editorials, they should know exactly where you stand. And in terms of objectivity, I don't even, when I write editorials, I'm not going to bring up the other side even, unless I can shoot it down in the next sentence, their argument. Because again, editorials like columns are the time to be like super opinionated and come out and make a really strong position for something or other.
What advice can you give on focusing an editorial topic?
Specific. The more specific angle, the better. The tighter the angle, the better. It's like legalizing marijuana. I mean, are we talking about broadly for everyone? Or are we just talking medical marijuana? Are we talking about taxing it? I focus in on like a very specific angle and then just really go at it from there.
Can you think of, so you mentioned HERS, can you think of any of the other topics you heard, how to help them focus? Micronesian issue might be a big one that needs focus.
Yeah, I would get to, are they hanging out all together as one group because they feel more comfortable, or do they feel like ostracized from the rest of the classes and the rest of the student population? I would get at the root of that.
So do you have any tips on how to know if a topic is not suitable for an editorial or for a particular writer?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to that first question. I'm not going to write about something I'm not super passionate about, unless, sometimes there's editorial boards, so you have to kind of come to a group consensus on an issue and take a position. In which case, there's going to be times where you're not going to be hyper passionate about whatever. Another thing I would steer away from, or keep in mind, are just ethics. For instance, when I worked on Kauai, before I would usually work like noon to midnight or 11 to 11, somewhere in those. The mornings, I would work sometimes on boat tours off the South Shore, lead like dive tours and snorkel tours and stuff. So doing that, say a bill or something comes up in the legislature to like ban commercial boat tours on Kauai. I'm not going to write an editorial saying, we can't do that because it's a super big conflict of interest. So I would always keep that in mind too. Like, do you have a conflict of interest or an ethical reason to not write about this? So in Ohio is the Associated Press Columnist of the Year. That came about just because my editor picked up 3 of the columns that I'd written over the year and submitted them, and he didn't even tell me. He's like, he just did it. And then so he's like, by the way, you're the best columnist in the state. I was like, what? And that was the first year I'd ever even written a column too, so I was like, totally blown away. But also, I'm glad he did that because what he taught me, what instilled is a little bit more confidence. Like, okay, I'll take more chances, I'll write some more columns and keep going at it. As opposed to just kind of wondering, like, are these like resonating? So, because you don't always get feedback.
What's the difference between a column and an editorial?
Editorial is like the position of the newspaper itself. So it's good to have the publisher's approval, as well as sometimes you'll have a board of like 5 or 6 different opinion writers that write the position of the newspaper. So it's stronger in a way. It means a lot more. You know, if the Star Advertiser or Civil Beat comes out with a position as an editorial, it means, hey, this whole like organization believes this. Whereas a columnist is just that person's opinion, just the one person.
Was that a regular? So it was something people could expect every week?
It became regular, yeah, weekly column.
What was the name of it?
It changed. At one point it was like the Nomad Chronicles when I was traveling more. So it was about different travel things. And then, yeah, that's a good question. I don't remember what it was called before that.
Because what did Gene
think it
had a
had-
column about traffic, Gene Park,
Mhm.
and it was called Parkway.
Uh-huh.
And then
Yeah.
Mike Sy came and talked to us, and his column, Incidental Lives.
Yeah, it might have been Eagle's Nest or some play on my last
Uh-huh.
name. I forget. That's a good question. I have to look it up.
What advice can you give beginning editorial cartoonists?
Be prepared to really, really, really work hard, because papers are kind of shedding editorial cartoonists. But that is not to say, like, if that's what your calling is, to not go for it. It's just be prepared for an uphill kind of battle. I'd also be prepared to be more innovative. You know, take Civil Beat, for example. We have an editorial cartoonist that we just took on, in part because other papers are losing them, so we're like, oh, this is kind of like a thing that we could add to the table that's different. But what if our editorial cartoonist, because we're online only, what if the cartoon wasn't just like just a stagnant drawing, but like was more of an animation or something? You know, you could bring a new dimension to editorial cartoons. So, something.
So, just tell us about your experience.
Choosing them. The idea to me is more important than the artistic value. Communicating whatever the idea is in a very succinct way trumps the artistic value. That said, there's a ton of editorial cartoons when I was choosing each day. So every day, part of my job as editor was to pick 2 editorial cartoons, one at the top of the opinion page and one at the bottom. And so many of them, like say Obamacare or whatever was the issue, a lot of people are saying having very similar ideas. So then it's the artistic value that's going to make me pick one or the other. If there's, you know, all things being equal, I'm going to go with the one that looks a lot cooler. So, like I said, because there were 2 each day, I would pick 2 very different topics. You know, I'm not going to do both of them on Obamacare, both of them on legalizing marijuana. I'm going to try to appeal to a broad section of readers. You know, one of them might resonate with some readers, others might resonate with others. So I try to diversify them in topic as well as position. You know, if one of them's like more liberal leaning, I'll do that, and then I'll make the other one a little bit more conservative leaning. So just try to get that balance, even on the opinion page. That's something I see a lot. Like for symbols, you know, eagle symbolizing America. Which is weird because that's my last name too, and I don't think I symbolize America necessarily. Like dove for peace, donkey for the Democratic Party, fat man, big business, swollen with self-importance, absolutely. Using those symbols, readers see them like, okay, and then you can editorialize based on that because everyone has like a common, you know, perception of what that's like. I think you mentioned analogies too, right? Metaphors? Yeah, I love that one too. School violence being portrayed like a snake in the grass, like threatening to strike if provoked. Makes total sense. You take something that's more simple outside the box that's especially more easy to illustrate, you know, snake in the grass versus like 2 kids like maybe trying to start a fight or something. It doesn't tell the whole story it doesn't quite tell the whole story as effectively. So.
How about specific? Like, let's say the gossip one. What could we have as a metaphor for gossip? You want to say that gossip hurts, right?
So a bunch of teens in one area and one teen alone.
That's very literal. So that's very literal, and people could see it. But as a that wouldn't be a metaphor. A metaphor would be something else that makes you think of that. can we think of anything? You know, and that's the thing about brainstorming is, you know, maybe you're like, oh, this isn't a good idea, but shout it out. I was thinking of, you know, glass, because glass cuts, and gossip can cut your feelings.
Cyberbullying, use a computer.
The computer, right, right. How about a symbol for gossip?
Lips.
Lips. You
Oh,
can-
it can be like an iPhone and it's just beating up somebody.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
How about the marijuana? So you want to say you think it's not good,
So
right?
what it hurts when you smoke, like what does it mess up in your stomach? And use that thing as like a character, like coughing up something.
Oh, someone's coughing up something.
Like not something.
Like your future. Earlier start time. What could be a symbol? What's a very obvious symbol for start time?
Clock, maybe?
A clock, right?
I have a question. So I heard about political cartoons, but is there a difference between a political cartoon and an editorial cartoon? And if there is, what is it?
It's subtle. I mean, I would expect a political cartoon to feature politicians, you know, or a very political issue. Whereas editorial cartoons can be very broad. You know, it could be, you know, stuff like happening in your classroom. You can make an editorial cartoon out of it. It might not be a political cartoon.
I have questions. So what extent does our opinions be in editorial cartoons? Because there could be like stereotypes and a lot of opinions with idea for
I think editorial cartoons they welcome the chance to put your opinion out there. So it can run the gamut. You could just be commenting on an issue. Like, hey, this is happening, or just taking a very firm position, but through a cartoon instead of words. So I think there could be a lot of opinion in editorials, and that's okay.
So how do you make a cartoon about a situation that is like serious without trying to trying to make it look like it's
Yeah, that's true. That's tricky. It's a very fine line, and it's the same, I think, with words or with the written editorial. You know, you've got to like ride that line very carefully.
Does it have to be funny?
I don't think it does. Yeah. I think,
So, oh sorry.
yeah, it doesn't have to be funny.
So for my story, like how do I make a cartoon without them getting mad, like we're talking?
Yeah. I mean, you could have a group of kids like outside of a school building and then bubble, like maybe they're talking about something or other, and then another kid coming around the corner, maybe trying to approach them. It seems to be sort of the issue, right? You're trying to reach out to them and like maybe bring them in, something like that. Yeah, it definitely doesn't have to be funny as much as just convey the issue.
I think it.
In the Focus series, it was originally, one of the working titles was like The Neighborhood or something like that. So my original idea was that anyone could be a subject for a focus piece. You don't have to be, you know, some political leader or major athlete or anything like that. Like it could be your neighbor, you know, because I feel like everyone has a story to tell, and it can be told through captivating photos. And I wanted it told in their own words. So those pieces, if you've seen them, are just slideshows with their voice laid over top of it. You know.
We watched the Okinawan artist.
Okay, yeah, that was one of my favorites. That one worked out really well, and this goes towards more of the how. I wanted to get it as close to them and their life and their world as possible. And so he had all his weaving stuff inside his home, which is great not to just see him do all the weaving stuff, but also because he's got pictures around and things like that, stuff hanging on the wall that tells his story, you know, pictures of him on traveling or things like that, or his family and kids. So getting that stuff, so shots of him where in the background it's also helping tell his story, that was super effective for that, I feel like.
Are you photographing while someone's interviewing her?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I do think that the tag team works best, but because, you know, photographers and stuff like kind of going to the wayside too in journalism, like a lot of journalists, you know, need to take their own photos as well. That's how I got started. You know, the paper was very small staffed, and my editor just handed me a camera, like, get comfortable with this. But then I ended up really enjoying it, so it's, you know, sometimes I would assign myself just photo assignments because it was a nice little break from writing. But when you are out there with two people, they start getting engaged and they forget you're there as the photographer, and that's key. You want that natural thing. You don't want a bunch of very posed kind of photos because they look posed. But when it was just me, I would just be like, hey, just keep doing what you're doing. and just talk to them casually, and eventually they do forget you're there, and they get wrapped up in doing what they're doing, and that's when you're going to get those good shots. I also think a lot about angles, not just like if I'm taking angles of you guys here straight ahead, but maybe like from down low, or like try to get real high and shoot down, because it can just dramatically change the subject. Especially if you want to portray someone as very strong and big, I would shoot them down low and project them like that, because they're going to appear a lot bigger. Or if you're trying to tell a story about someone feeling very small, I would shoot them from the top and go down, because it'll portray them that way. We often came back with just hundreds and hundreds of photos, and we're trying to boil them down to 10 or 12 of the best ones. So what I usually do when I get back is I look at all of them, just try to just straight through, and the ones that I find myself staying on more, I'll put for one pile. Like if it's like holding my attention more, like okay, it goes there, it goes there. And then
Visually, you move it.
exactly, literally. I just drag them over into another folder to help separate. And then I kind of do that same process again and tweet it down even more. And then I'm just looking for variety at that point. I don't want the same kind of photo, 10 times in a row for that kind of slideshow. It's going to bore you guys. So I look for that diversity after that.
When I first saw it and I saw multimedia, I expected it to be a video.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a discussion about how you guys should do that focus multimedia, doing it with
Sure.
photographs, slideshow, or video?
Sure, yeah. We had talked about doing video, but it was, so focus, the idea originally came from this New York Times piece series called 1 in 8 million, which I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with, but it's the same kind of concept, except imagine it like 50 times better. Because one, they have a lot more resources, a lot more experience, a lot more talent. They're doing to do one focus piece, a team of 20 people working, for a month on it. But we love that concept, so that's kind of where it came from. But there was discussion, about doing video. It was just more of a, let's set it apart. A lot of people are doing video now. Let's do something different. Get back to those images that just hold your attention a little bit more, maybe.
On your suicide story, I read it and I just wanted to know how did you feel when you were interviewing people and writing this story?
Emotional, human.
Did you
Yeah, it's an issue that's, I think, touches everyone. Everyone knows, I feel like, someone that has dealt with this or someone that knows someone else. And,
so how did you get the idea of writing it first? Suicide on your mind?
Talking to friends and family, that kind of thing. Came from close to home. It's like, wow, this is a big issue. And then I started looking at different statistical books and stuff, and I started looking for trends, and I saw it going up like that, and I was like, whoa, we need to write about this. So that's kind of where it came from, close to home kind of thing. Which is, I think, where a lot of good stories came from, whether it's suicide or whether it's medical marijuana, maybe you have a parent that could really benefit from it or something like that. A lot of those stories, I think, can come close to home. Yeah.
I taught them the reporter needs to stay out of the story. And I noticed that Civil Beat often says, Civil Beat asked, or so-and-so told Civil Beat. And I was curious, is that a changing trend? Is that something Civil Beat does? Do you know anything about that thought process?
Sure. I do see it as a changing trend. I think in part because readers want that more personal kind of connection, not this completely unbiased, non-human kind of voice coming at you. So I do see it changing. The trick is staying objective and staying balanced with that and not inserting your opinion in a news story. The other reason for that, saying Civil Beat asked, or they told Civil Beat, I think it started as a trend several years ago because papers want you to know that they got this story. And it kind of just is rubbed off on other media. It's like, oh, we should do that. I think that's probably where it came from. Yeah.
And how do you feel about that as a trained journalist? So you would have probably been trained before, when that would have been a no-no, right? Well, how do you feel about it?
My first reaction, I like to use as few words as possible, so if I could just say he said, I prefer that over he told Civil Beat. So that's my first reason for not being a huge fan of that. But I've kind of grown to like it in some ways where, say I'm covering a meeting where a lot of things are being said, like on an open public floor or something like that. If I talk to a representative or senator afterward, that's a great way to let the reader know, hey, he's just telling me this. He's not he's not telling everyone this, but this is like a private interview afterwards. So it's a good way of distinguishing that. But I'm more of that old school, like stay out of the stories kind of journalist as much as possible.
Your title is reporter host.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that?
That originally came from the idea that Civil Beat would try to be different. I mean, everything about Civil Beat would try to just be different than what you're going to get in the daily newspaper. The reporter host came from the idea that we should engage with our readers more. So we'll post this story, and then you'll see the comment section at the bottom where people ask questions. We'll like get in the debate and talk to people, answer their questions. So that's where the host part came from.
Does that affect how you feel about your job, your role, the expectations as being a reporter host versus a reporter?
Yeah, it's more time consuming. I know that, but it also makes it more rewarding. So because you're actually engaging with like live human, it's not just like in print world where you just put the story out and then boom, you're on to the next one and it's forgotten. So it makes all the stories, I think, a little bit more personal, that interaction. I thought it was a good concept from the get-go. I receive a lot of, in the way of like positive feedback, which is very rare in journalism. People are more quick to criticize. But it's one of the things that I consistently hear over the past couple of years. Is we're really glad, we love seeing when you guys get in there and get engaged. So it's kind of a response to the readers.
Just a point, I knew what he was going to say, but I want him to say it. So that question, I was kind of like, oh, I feel silly asking it because I kind of know, but I wanted him to say that so I could use it as a quote. So you guys can keep that in mind when you're asking questions. Even if you know the answer, you can ask the question anyway.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because when I approach stories and stuff, I think if I'm asking this question on behalf of like all the readers. I may know the answer, but I'm not asking it for me. I'm asking it for everyone else, and I need that person to say it in their own words. So.
What is your advice to future journalists?
Practice. And take chances. Take chances. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I think a lot of journalists anyway can get sort of, I can do this all on my own. In this case, your teacher. For me, it was leaning on editors. If I had doubts or something about the way a story was going, just knock on the door. Like, hey, this is where I'm kind of stuck. Don't sort of, just isolate yourself because it can be rough. But the other is, you're going to have a story or two if you're going to try to really affect some change. It's going to really make some people upset, the people that are maybe doing something wrong. For instance, my first big one was in Ohio. There was this guy who owned a trailer park, and he didn't take care of it whatsoever. There's literally sewage running down the streets. Like, it was just absolutely gross. So that eventually one neighbor spoke out and gave me a call, like, hey, there's an issue I think you should look at. And it turns out the EPA had fined him all this money, and he never paid the fines. But then on the other hand, the guy that owned the trailer park, he was like a deacon in the church. He was like super high ranking. He was the girls' softball coach, like super respected, but no one knew he had this other side. So I did the story. And the next day, he's just calling, he's bringing an attorney into the office, saying, we're going to sue you. I'm like, well, what? But before we went to publication, we just went over every single line, just to make sure it's 100% tight, and that we can defend anything. And we could, so we couldn't do anything on the legal side. The day after that, though, he went to a county council meeting, which is aired on public access television, and he's just like, Nathan Eagle. I guess the point of that is just to have a thick skin, and develop a thick skin.
Yeah.
So he kept on saying, like, Nathan.
Oh yeah, he was just like blasting me like on public television. I'm like, oh my god. So, and it makes you second guess yourself until you get a few of those under your belt. You start second guessing yourself. You're like, should I have done this? Like this guy. Even people that do wrong things often have other sides of them where they're doing really great things. But does that mean you just don't do this story? No, because
I think that was a good story.
yeah. Being brave or trying to have that courage, like to take the people with the most power and hold them accountable. That's like the bottom line for me. No one should be like untouchable. So, and if we're not going to do it, then who is? So, you just have to have that faith in yourself, knowing, okay, I did this. This was a good thing to do, and I did it. That's as far as you can take it. You need to worry about it, really.
If you guys don't have any more questions, I was thinking if Nathan doesn't mind that we try and sort of talk a little bit more about some of your editorial ideas and just sort of explore them talking now with a professional in our midst. Is that all right with you? We have about 10 more minutes. Because what I wanted to think about is some of your topics, you know, one of the things you need to do as a journalist is either tell someone something new or tell them something new in a new or interesting way. So I'm kind of interested in like Eva's, stop gossiping. I mean, are you going to get anybody who's going to disagree with you? You know, so it's kind of like how do we make sure that that kind of thing isn't like oh yeah, she just told me everything I already know. How are you going to make it new and stand out and say something unique that adds to the conversation instead of just, oh yeah, same old.
I'd look for examples, like very specific examples of actual people. And then it'll, instead of just hearing the word stop gossiping, like just create a situation, like an actual situation.
How do you...
Like if you're seeing something go down or whatever, you know, call them on it and then ask them why they're doing that and record what they're saying. I think specific is the way to make it new because I think a lot of people would just, like you said, they would agree. Yeah, that's bad. Unless you can find people that, like you're saying, that don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Ask them why. Like, why is it okay? And just share their side. You could even approach it as a case for gossiping, and it's almost kind of tongue-in-cheek, but like, you're like almost taking a position like, I think people should gossip, but you're actually making the point that it's bad.
Yeah.
You know, that'd be a fresh way to look at it.
But it's kind of awkward and just like writing everything down what people are saying.
It is. A lot of journalism is kind of awkward with that. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't, like if you're overhearing like a group of girls or guys like gossiping about something or other, I wouldn't use their quotes and attach it to their name without telling them first. But I'd be like, hey, I heard you say that, you know, I'm going to write a story and I was interested, you know, could you talk about it to me a little bit more? That kind of thing.
I think you could also use things you overhear without using quotation marks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can summarize. There's a couple different themes of that people are gossiping about, you know. You can do a line of each one and you kind of get into the editorial.
And you know, the pro for gossiping might be you need to develop a thick skin. I mean, you can't control what other people say about you, so maybe you just need to be able to deal with it.
How do I get both sides of the story?
She's going to talk about.
In editorials, because they're opinions, I don't necessarily always worry about getting the other side. You know, if you're coming up with an opinion, I just go for that. You know, I go for the angle and I go for the facts that support my opinion. I'll get the other side only if I can then knock it down in the next sentence or two. That's the only time I'll even introduce the other side.
You don't really.
Otherwise, it weakens your own argument.
Do you feel like you need to know the other side?
I think it's great to know the other side.
You might not have to use
Yeah.
So
it.
do you think
Right. Absolutely.
gossiping is like a good way to get both sides?
Yeah. I think it would be, you'll get most people agreeing, but I think it's a good, relevant topic, you know. Again, it comes back to like considering your readers, students, right? So it's a good topic that everyone can relate to. So it's just a matter of, like she was saying, presenting it fresh and just giving it a good, solid voice with examples. I think it'll really help. Yeah.
The prom one. What do you think? So you're gonna come across as a fuddy-duddy.
Yep.
No fun.
That's a great one too.
Well, I'm thinking more on like long-term effects rather than just something short.
So do you think the whole prom experience should not even exist?
No, I'm saying that. Sorry. I know that this
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but then like just thinking about it, I don't really think it's really necessary.
I would state your case and give a lot of reasons why.
What do you think people get out of prom?
Memorable.
Memorable.
It could be
It should
forgotten the next
memorable in
day.
high school.
You have a good time, but then also you can just, have that at your house.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Could you say, you know what, this is what people get out of prom?
It's a reason to get all classy and like all dressed up just for one night. You could do that any other night.
What about people who don't have money? Does that make them feel excluded from the high school experience?
I mean, everybody's trying to be somebody else with their outfit or how they're gonna bring their ladies in.
Do you think there's a way that some of the
It's good for
experience?
some
I think the entrance fee should be free.
I think it's good for some people, but it can also be bad for other people that can't afford it.
That's why I was thinking, you know, if you take the experiences people get out of prom, is there a way that those experiences can still be provided more cheaply?
And that goes down to like focusing the editorial. I'd focus on one. If it's cost, which seems like a great one to go after, I would just keep it focused on that. You know,
Is there a way to do
but
it?
there's other uses for this money. Like, what kind of ideas do you have? I mean, I would propose a couple ideas at the end.
How to make it
How to make it free, or how to make it low
less
cost.
costly?
But the cost angle seems really good, and just the discussion, like real quick. You know, you have a good topic.
Yeah. And then the marijuana. How are you going to make sure it's not too big? Because that is a huge issue.
I guess I'd probably stick to teenagers.
How legalizing
Focus.
marijuana would affect teenagers.
Yes.
I mean,
Would teenagers, if they were to
they would
legalize
agree
it
with-
in,
They would agree with her.
if they were to legalize marijuana in Hawaii, I mean, you might know this more than I do, at what age would it be legal?
Isn't it 21, I think?
There's different proposals. Some are 21, some are 18, some are 9.
So you guys it still wouldn't be
Mine said
legal,
18.
for
maybe
you.
just shoot it on weekends.
right? It still wouldn't be legal for you. So how would it affect you, legalizing it or not legalizing it? Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Brownies. I make brownies for my, there's a lot in there, so if you feel like sharing with Civil Beat, you can share. If you don't feel
I
like
will do that.
sharing, you just hold on to them.
I will absolutely do that.